Are you board certified?
Yes.
All right. And what certifications do you hold?
Board certified neurosurgeon, the American Board of Neurological Surgery, ABNS.
How many years have you been a surgeon?
Not including residency, that would be 24, 25 years postgraduate from my residency program. If you included that, that would be another 7 years on top of it.
As you sit here today, can you estimate how many surgeries you've performed on the human spine?
Thousands, I couldn't tell you.
In addition to your teaching obligations, do you lecture to any conferences?
I do. I lecture here at SIU. I've lectured at MUSC, and I am invited from time to time to give lectures at other universities or teaching programs.
And if Magna, if you could scroll down, please. Continuously, please. All right, stop there, go back up. Invited lectures and presentations. In terms of your CV, this lists a number of your lectures you've provided or held, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if we could continue scrolling slowly, please. Stop, please. This, and listed as number 61, is invited guest speaker glioblastoma, the Hanner and Anvil. Was that your last speaking gig?
That was probably the last speaking presentation outside of Southern Illinois University.
Are you a published author of any articles or learned treatises?
Yeah, under the bibliography are examples of publications of mine.
And these publications, are these related to illnesses of the spine?
Some of them are illnesses of the spine. Some of them are related to the brain tumors, that sort of thing.
Could you please scroll down, Magna, slowly? Stop. So according to your CV, it looks like you have roughly 62 published articles related to the brain or spine. Is that about accurate?
Yes.
All right. Other than this one that's dated January 13th, 2025, have you published anything else since this CV?
There's stuff that are we call in press, or there's things that are still being reviewed. So there's stuff floating out there, but that doesn't have, it's not been put in a journal yet.
Okay. Have you had any articles or published materials that have been rejected by any peer-reviewed panel?
I don't know if I understand the question correctly.
All right. In any of these articles that you've published, 1 through 62, as reflected in your CV, have any of them been rejected for publication?
Okay, so none of them have been eliminated for some reason after the fact, but some of these, you submit to a journal. Not every one of them is accepted to the journal you send to, then you find another journal and that kind of thing. So it'd be an exception to get something accepted right off the bat. Usually they're accepted with revisions requested. And some of these have been flat out rejected by the initial journal it was sent to, but then published by another journal. But none of them have been retracted, if that makes any sense.
It does. Do you hold any patents as it relates to the spine or brain?
I have about 21 patents or so, United States, and international probably add more to that, but about 21 patents or so.
Magna, if you could please scroll down. continuously till I say stop. Go back up one page. All right, listed on page 23 of your CV are your beginning of your patents, correct?
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
if you could please scroll down. Stop. In terms of number 21, a patent is issued on March 4th, 2025. Is this a patent that you applied for?
Yes, right. So this is the seventh patent in this family of devices series that's used in spine surgery to replace vertebral bodies that are injured by trauma, tumor, degenerative issues or so. So this is something that the work on this began in 2012, and a variety of different patents have come out of this these concepts.
All right, and an expandable vertebral body replacement device and method. This is a patent for a certain device for the spine.
Yes, sir.
All right. And then listed underneath the patents, you have clinical studies. What are clinical studies?
These are before a device or a drug comes to market, it's got to be studied in patients. And these are various different clinical trials, either that have been homegrown or I began them or conceived them, or others that industry or others have conceived, and I was a co-investigator on it.
And as we scroll down on your CV, slowly, it shows about 21 clinical studies. Does that sound about right?
There's probably more than that, but there's at least 21.
And in your CV, what is an ad hoc reviewer?
I think that's when somebody sends me a paper from a journal and asks me to tell me what I think about it, whether we should accept it, whether we should make changes, whether we should reject it.
Okay, so in terms of these journal as an ad hoc reviewer, is it fair to describe it as you're relying on your expertise to determine if the article has any scientific merit?
Yes.
And the people who are sending it to you are relying upon your experience and background to determine if it has scientific or medical merit?
Yes.
All right, if you could take down Exhibit 1, please. The jury has heard a lot in this case already about central cord syndrome. Broadly speaking, what is central cord syndrome?
It's an incomplete injury, spinal cord injury. It's one of the more common ones we see, usually presenting after a sudden impact, extension of the neck, and paralysis of the arms, worse than the legs.
And this sudden impact, what is the sudden impact to?
It's to a part of the body, and then indirectly, it's transmitted to the spine, where the spine is compressed against generally pre-existing degenerative conditions, such as bone spurs, disc herniations, or congenital narrowing of the spinal canal, the canal where the spinal cord runs within the bony column.
And what, for the jury, and I'm sure it's pretty self-explanatory to the jury, but what does the spinal cord do for the human body?
Spinal cord is sort of like a major cable. And if you think of it as a giant wire with many little wirelets in it, it brings impulses back and forth from the brain to all of the nerves in the body that bring signals to muscles, our organs, to make them move, to do the things that they do. If you think about the spinal cord or the nerves as wires and the muscles as machines, that's probably the best analogy to try to understand what this spinal cord does.
And when you talked about central cord syndrome as being a sudden impact, is that a sudden impact to the spinal cord?
It's an impact to the spinal cord that is immediately symptomatic after that.
Do you treat patients with central cord syndrome?
Yes.
About how many patients a year do you treat with central cord syndrome?
Well, that's a tough question. It's one of the more common things we see after spinal cord trauma, after trauma in general. I'd say we probably see between, depending on the year, anywhere between 5 to 20 patients a year.
Is there an underlying medical condition a person must have for them to suffer central cord syndrome?
Generally, we see it in an older person with pre-existing degenerative conditions, stenosis, we call it in general, and narrowing of the canal where the spinal cord runs through the bony channel in the spine.
What about degenerative disc disease? Is that an underlying condition that contributes to central cord syndrome?
Very frequently.
Okay. And degenerative disc disease or the narrowing of the spinal canal, are these caused by acute injuries or accidents?
Can you ask that again? Sorry.
Sure. Degenerative disc disease, how does one get degenerative disc disease?
It's a slow degenerative process where the discs wear out over the years from repetitive use, from life with significant physical activities, or some people are predisposed to have these discs wear out. These discs are shock absorbers when we're young and healthy. They're very hydrated. As we get older, they become less hydrated, and in order to stabilize the spine, bone spurs will grow around these degenerated discs to sort of give that surface area that we need to support things.
Sure. Mechanically, what does the head or neck have to do for a person to suffer central cord syndrome?
It needs to extend just like this. It has to go backwards.
Okay, and when you said extend, you demonstrated to the jury that your head tilted backwards.
Yes, sir.
All right. Does central cord syndrome, is that caused by a head tilting forward or flexion?
No.
Does central cord syndrome happen with any head tilting to the side, left or right?
No.
In terms of central cord syndrome, what are some of the things that a person could do that would cause them to suffer central cord syndrome?
Sure. From the mildest type of presentation or the mildest trauma, we've seen patients in dental chairs with their head extended backwards and the dentist doing what they do in your mouth, and patient developing numbness, tingling, and weakness. We've seen patients fall asleep in an extended position and wake up with weakness. Patients falling, older patients falling and hitting their head, their forehead on the sink and becoming paralyzed.
When you talked about this weakness from potentially falling asleep on a couch, what are you talking about with respect to weakness?
Weakness in the arms and legs. Arms worse than legs generally.
And along those lines, what are the symptoms of central cord syndrome that you see in the patients you treat?
From movement, it's weakness, either complete paralysis, which improves generally in a pattern where the legs improve sooner than the arms and the hands the least. From sensory symptoms, some patients will get burning symptoms in their hands or legs, with the hands resolving after the legs. This type of thing.
If someone has an impact to their spinal cord for central cord syndrome, are the symptoms immediate?
They are immediate.
Is it possible for someone to have an impact to their spinal cord and then have symptoms days later?
Not from a central cord syndrome.
Now, we talked about central cord syndrome as being an injury to the spinal cord. Could you please tell the jury how an injury to the spinal cord is different to the injury to the muscles or ligaments of the neck?
Sure. Injuries to the muscles or ligaments of the neck are very common, and this causes pain in the neck, generally worsening over the next several days. and then slowly easing off over time. An injury to the spinal cord is a much more severe. It's oftentimes not associated with any kind of neck pain, but one has various different neurological dysfunctions, from the mildest being numbness and tingling in the hands and legs, arms, to weakness in the arms and legs. So that spinal cord is bringing sensation to the brain and bringing movement to the muscles in the body. When you injure the spinal cord, it's not necessarily associated with pain at all, but you have dysfunction, and that's the key differentiator.
And that dysfunction, is that immediate?
For central cord syndrome, it's immediate.
Now, you are being offered as an expert on behalf of the defendants in this case. Did I adequately summarize your role here?
Yes.
All right. In terms of the documents, videos, medical records, what were you provided to be able to render your opinions in this case?
There's a whole variety of records, including many CAT scans, MRIs, plain X-rays. There was many medical records, emergency room records, hospital records.
If I put up a summary of the relevant documents we sent you, would that help you specify what you've reviewed to offer your opinions?
Yes, sir.
If we could put up Exhibit 2, please. Up on your screen is a summary of records that were sent to you related to the medical history of Mr. Bennett. Looking through this summary, does this capture the medical records you reviewed in preparation for your testimony?
Yes.
In terms of the depositions listed from Dr. Alan Malone to the deposition transcript of JRC Express, are those depositions you reviewed?
Yes.
All right, and the other records from medical narrative of Dr. Todd Chapman to the medical illustration of this type of surgery performed on Mr. Bennett, does that adequately summarize what you've reviewed?
Yes.
As you sit here today, what opinion or opinions are you going to offer to the jury?
The accident from July 1st, 2020 did not cause his central cord syndrome, Mr. Bennett's central cord syndrome.
Okay. And what specifically do you rely on to form that opinion?
I think the critical thing is that videotape showing him getting in and out of his truck, where he's moving, he's able to climb up, he's able to climb down, he's able to pull himself up. He does not have a central cord syndrome.
Is this a dash cam video that shows Mr. Bennett's truck at the scene where the vehicles were pulled over?
Yes.
All right. And my understanding is it's roughly a 37-minute dash cam video. Do you recall it being that length?
Yes.
All right. I pulled up Exhibit 4. I'll represent to you that I have cut down the video of 37 minutes to roughly 2 minutes of excerpts of Mr. Bennett getting in and out of his truck. And I'd like to walk through with it and have you comment as we go through it. And first off, does this first image properly reflect the images you saw on the dash cam that were contained in the 37 minutes video?
Yes.
Great. If we could press play, and I'll ask you a question. Pause it, please. I'll represent to you that the prior testimony is that's Mr. Bennett getting into his truck. With respect to that video of him getting out of his truck, what are your thoughts on that video and what does it show?
It shows a man easily able to climb up into this vehicle.
In your opinion, as a person who treats central cord syndrome, if that is Mr. Bennett, does he have any symptoms of central cord syndrome?
No.
And that, your opinion on that is based upon a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
All right, if you could continue playing. You could pause that. Again, assuming that's Mr. Bennett, does he have any indication of any symptoms related to central cord syndrome?
No, he doesn't. He shows incredible dexterity getting out of that truck, able to get to the ground, turn around briskly, adjust his pants, and then walk off with normal gait.
And if he had central cord syndrome at this point, what would what should we expect to see?
Depending on the severity of it, he would have trouble opening up the door. He would have trouble rising from a sitting to standing position. He would have had a lot of trouble or the inability to get out of the cab and to come down those steep steps to the ground. He may not have tried. If it was that severe, he wouldn't have had the ability. If it was milder, he would have fallen in all likelihood. He wouldn't have been able to turn on his heel and walk off the way he had. There are just no features here that are consistent with a central cord syndrome.
And in terms of the symptoms for central cord syndrome, even if the condition were mild, would you expect to see a truck driver able to do that?
I would not expect that.
All right, if we could continue playing, please. I'll represent to you that last clip is where the dash cam video ends. But at any point in this video in Exhibit 4, do you see any indication that Mr. Bennett is suffering from central cord syndrome?
No evidence.
And in terms of this video, if he were suffering even the mildest form of central cord syndrome, would he have been able to do anything that you saw in that video?
No.
Now, in terms of this progression, in terms of central cord syndrome, well, let me ask you this. Central cord syndrome involves a contact with the spinal cord. Did I summarize that right?
The spinal cord is being compressed against something within it.
All right.
Within the
And
spinal canal.
okay, but the spinal cord is having trauma to it. Is that what I
Correct.
understood?
Yes.
All right. Now, in terms of this trauma, is central cord syndrome similar to what we often see football players suffering when they have spinal cord injuries on the field?
You know, it's interesting. The ones that are just laid out and you don't see any movement and you're horrified, but then hear later on that they're moving their arms and legs again. This is the type of thing that we're seeing in a severe central cord syndrome.
What about mild central cord syndrome in terms of the presentation of symptoms?
The mildest form, you still would have symptoms at the time, and that would be perhaps a burning or tingling sensation in the hands.
And what about with respect to a mild central cord syndrome with your ability to use your arms and legs?
Generally going to have some weakness, arms worse than legs. As the severity increases, the degree of paralysis increases.
And in the video you watched, both the 37-minute original video and the excerpt video I showed you, do you show Mr. Bennett demonstrating any difficulties with the use of his arms?
No.
Do you see any difficulty with Mr. Bennett's use of his legs?
No.
The jury has heard from plaintiffs, experts, and doctors that his central cord syndrome was caused by the incident. What do you think of those opinions?
They're not correct.
And why is that?
You would have seen on that videotape some symptoms, some signs, some disability, some dysfunction. There are none.
Is it possible for Mr. Bennett to have had central cord syndrome at that time and been able to mask any of those symptoms and move his body normally?
No. You have to have a spinal cord injury in order to have a spinal cord injury, and a central cord syndrome is a spinal cord injury.
And if you have a spinal cord injury, that means you have outward symptoms of that?
In order to have a spinal cord injury, you have to have symptoms.
I'm going to play you what's marked as plaintiff's exhibit 51. Dr. Frankel, did you review this animation in preparation for today's testimony?
Yes.
Okay, so you have seen this animation in its entirety before?
Yes.
Okay, if we could just press play, please. Pause it right there. At this point, do you have any concerns or disagreements with this animation?
Yeah, you know, the animation it's very similar to, or parts of it are very similar to the CAT scans and MRIs performed on around July 7th, 2020. You have the anterior portion of the spinal column. That's the far most right portion of the screen. And this is very reminiscent of his CAT scan and MRI, where the significant degenerative changes are depicted here. But what's missing is in the canal with that yellow stripe. That yellow stripe represents the spinal cord. The degenerative changes were left out. So you only have half of it depicted, the part that's outside the spinal cord, but the stuff within the spinal cord at this point in time is not being depicted.
Okay, if we could continue playing. Stop right there. We could just go back 5 seconds, please. Where the neck is bent. Now, this image that's up on your screen, it says during rec, and it looks like the neck is tilted. Does this properly reflect the mechanics of how central cord syndrome is caused?
So the only thing that I find correct about this is the extension.
All right. And in this video, there's no indication of a head flexion. Did I interpret that correctly?
Correct.
All right. And in this animation, and we can continue to play it, in this animation, there's no indication of the head going side to side. Did I summarize that correctly?
Correct.
All right. Press pause, please. We could just go back 5 seconds. All right, that's perfect. What is depicted in this image that's up on your screen, Dr. Frankel?
Well, can I add a little bit more about this particular image and the last frame?
You'd like to go back 5 more seconds?
Yes, please.
Okay, 5 more seconds.
So,
is there anything you want to add there?
These arrows seem to suggest that on extension, C3-4, C4-5, C5-6, and C6-7, 4 discs herniated on extension. Be very unlikely for 4 discs to herniate simultaneously. This would almost be unheard of. We would also think that discs might herniate if they would with flexion. But what this is seeming to suggest is on extension, 4 discs are herniating and pushing against the spinal cord. And this is not how central cord syndrome exists. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Please finish.
These discs and the degenerative changes that we saw in the CT and the MRI from 7-7 suggested that there were chronic stenotic changes in Mr. Bennett's spine. And it's the extension that pushes that spinal cord up against these pre-existing degenerative changes. That's the only other addition that I would like to add to this about this cartoon.
With respect to this animation, in reviewing the medical records, the films, MRIs of Mr. Bennett, did you see any evidence of 4 discs impacting his spinal cord?
There was narrowing at C3-4, C4-5, C5-6, and C6-7, which I believe to be chronic degenerative changes with disc osteophyte complexes.
Sure, but with respect to the MRI, films, any x-rays or anything image-wise, did you see any indication that there was bruising of the spinal cord from 4 different discs?
Just at C3-4, which was the next thing you were showing me, there was evidence of myelomalacia.
And what is myomalacia for the jury?
Myelomalacia is scarring of the substance of the spinal cord.
All right, if we could press play and then pause it where there's the first mild bruising. Pause. What does this image show, Dr. Frankel?
This is the area of what I believe to be myelomalacia at C3-4.
And another way of describing myomalacia, is that bruising of the spinal cord?
Scarring from chronic compression, from chronic disc osteophyte compression, not acute bruising.
Okay, but with respect, if this were acute bruising caused by central cord syndrome, even if a mild bruising, would a patient such as Mr. Bennett have had outside symptoms to indicate such bruising?
Yes, if you saw swelling on a spinal cord from an acute injury, you would expect the patient to be paralyzed from that level down.
Okay, and would that be symptoms you see immediately or progressed over time?
Immediate.
You could take down the animation, please. In terms of the medical records you reviewed for your opinions today, do you know whether Mr. Bennett currently has central cord syndrome?
The records seem to reflect that he does.
Okay. As you sit here today, could you say with a degree of medical certainty what caused Mr. Bennett's central cord syndrome?
I cannot.
All right. As you sit here today with a reasonable degree of medical certainty, can you state what did not cause his central cord syndrome?
The accident on 7/1/2020 could not have caused it.
I have no further questions.
Good morning, Dr. Frankel. My name's Scott Myers. I'm the attorney on behalf of Lewis Bennett, one of the attorneys on his behalf. You agree that Lewis has permanent spinal cord damage, correct?
It appears so from the record.
Okay. And you have a lot of experience treating patients, and you agree their level of pain is going to be different depending on each patient, right?
Correct.
Okay. And the neurological symptoms that each patient experiences is going to be different from patient to patient.
I'd agree to that.
And some patients that suffer spinal cord compression can have some symptoms, but not others.
I agree. However, you need to have some symptoms in order to have spinal cord compression or injury.
And you agree that a spinal cord compression can have serious neurological symptoms, correct?
Yes.
And tell me how I'm supposed to pronounce this. Myelopathy?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's an injury of the substance of the spinal cord. Is that correct?
Myelopathy are symptoms that are resulting from spinal cord compression or injury.
Okay. And you agree that Lewis had myelopathy? Or has myelopathy?
I believe he has myelopathy.
Okay. And you've looked at the injury, you've looked at his films, and you saw an actual injury to his spinal cord, correct?
I saw what I believe to be myelomalacia at C3-4.
And if untreated, can myelomalacia or myelopathy lead to paralysis?
It may progress to that.
So it can worsen?
It can worsen.
From any of the records you saw from Lewis Bennett, did he have compression of a spinal cord? Well, let me ask this. In the MRIs pre-surgery from Atrium, you saw that Lewis had compression of his spinal cord?
Yes, sir.
And you've treated patients that were paralyzed or partially paralyzed because of spinal cord compression, correct?
Yes.
Is surgery the only option to decompress the spinal cord?
I think there are a variety of options. I think with compression and neurological dysfunction, it's one of the better options.
And the surgery that Lewis underwent, I believe he entered the hospital on July 7th, but had the surgery on July 8th, 2020. You believe that was a proper procedure to perform on Mr. Bennett, correct?
It was a surgical option for central cord syndrome and stenosis.
And you have no complaint about Dr. Chapman performing that procedure on Mr. Bennett, correct?
No. Sorry, no.
Thank you. That type of surgery is a serious, invasive procedure, correct?
Yes.
Lewis also had or not Lewis also, the C3, C7 the fusion of his spinal cord. That's a lot of segments to fuse, correct?
Yes, sir. On March 8th, 2021, he had a C3-4, 4-5, 5-6, and 6-7 anterior cervical discectomy and fusion.
Mm-hmm. And that's a majority of the cervical spine segments, correct?
Yes.
That amount of fusion, that many segments being fused, that'll greatly reduce his range of motion, correct?
It can.
With regard to the incident on July 1st, 2020, you believe that Lewis suffered an injury, correct?
Yes. And if I may elaborate on that?
I cannot stop you from doing that, doctor.
I believe it was a sprain or strain of the neck.
Okay, but you agree that that was caused by the July 1st, 2020 incident?
Yes.
Now, you reviewed Lewis's MRIs from after the July 1st, 2020 incident,
Yes.
and do you agree that the MRI shows a lesion on his spinal cord?
If the lesion you are referring to is the C3-4 myelomalacia, yes, it does show that.
Okay, and you also agree that Lewis had central cord, with Dr. Chapman, that Lewis did have central cord syndrome when he treated him in the Atrium Health Center on July 7th and 8th of 2020.
Yes, Dr. Chapman diagnosed him with central cord syndrome on July 7th, 2020.
And you agree with that diagnosis?
Yes.
None of the records that you reviewed show that Lewis had central cord syndrome prior to the July 1st, 2020 incident, correct?
Correct.
And you've looked at records back as far as, I believe, 2012,
Yes, sir.
and nothing in those records shows any symptomatic neck issues, correct?
Not that I recall.
And do you agree that CCS, if it's okay, can I refer to it as that, central cord syndrome?
Oh, sure.
That's caused by an acute or a traumatic injury, right?
It is generally caused by, it becomes symptomatic from an acute issue or traumatic issue.
Okay, so without an acute or traumatic issue, it would not cause an injury that requires surgery.
It would not cause central cord syndrome.
Okay. And you were talking something about stenosis. That's narrowing of the spinal canal, correct?
Yes.
And you agree that Lewis had that prior to the incident?
Yes.
The central stenosis, that's a pretty significant risk factor for central cord syndrome?
Yes.
You're aware that Lewis has testified about progressively worsening symptoms from just after the July 1st, 2020 incident and when he went to the hospital on July 7th, 2020, correct?
Yes.
So you agree that the acute or traumatic injury had to occur within the time frame of July 1st, 2020 to July 7th, 2020, correct?
Correct.
But your opinion is that something other than the incident with the defendant's vehicle caused Lewis's central cord syndrome between July 1st and July 7th, 2020.
Yes.
However, you're unable to state to a reasonable degree of medical probability what that other cause is, correct?
Correct.
Now, in your previous deposition, you suggested that it could have been caused by some vomiting that Mr. Bennett says occurred. Is that still something you're saying is a possibility that could have caused it?
It's a possibility.
Is vomiting not a flexion instead of an extension movement of your neck?
I think the point of it was if there was severe vomiting and violent moving of the neck, it's on the list of possibilities.
Okay. And if Mr. Bennett was feeling nausea following the July 1st, 2020 incident that caused him to vomit, would that vomit not also be related to the incident?
I don't know.
But it could,
To no degree of medical certainty.
along with the other causes to the central cord syndrome, right?
Correct.
You agree that Dr. Chapman's surgery was medically necessary to decompress the cord when he performed it?
I believe so.
And I might have asked something along these lines, but you have no problem with the surgery he performed, and you believe he made the correct choice to perform that surgery?
Correct. You asked that, and it's on the list of options surgically to treat that central cord syndrome on the 7th and the 8th.
And you just believe that the condition he was treating was unrelated to the incident 6 or 7 days prior?
Correct. I don't believe it was due to the incident on 7/1/2020.
Okay. With regard to Dr. Bendick's surgery, I believe he performed two, one about 3 months later, 3 months after the incident, and one I believe that was 9 months after the incident. You agree that the surgery performed by Dr. Bendix was medically appropriate and necessary to address Mr. Bennett's neck pain, correct?
So I think Dr. Bendix was performing, his indication was neck pain and injured discs and radiculopathy, I believe. And maybe to get closer to the answer to your question, the ACDF, anterior cervical discectomy and fusions that he performed can be indicated for radiculopathy.
All right, so I guess to ask the question again, you believe that the surgery he performed, you do not have let me rephrase all that. A lot of stuttering there. You don't disagree that the surgeries performed by Dr. Bendix were medically appropriate procedures to address Mr. Bennett's neck pain, do you?
Neck pain and radiculopathy. Neck pain alone, it's a gray zone, but the neck pain and radiculopathy that he cites, that procedure, the anterior cervical discectomies and fusions, are indicated for neck pain with radiculopathy. And I believe that was in his preoperative diagnosis.
Okay, so you agree with his performing of those surgeries?
Yes.
You agree that prolonged spinal cord injuries can lead to permanent neurological damage if not treated?
Yes.
If patients are left to deal with chronic severe pain, you've seen that cause depression and psychological issues in your patients, have you not?
I think chronic pain can cause those issues.
And you also agree that there's no medical records that show Lewis needed surgery before the truck incident, correct?
Correct.
But you now agree that Lewis needed surgeries after the incident.
Yes, but I don't know if the incident caused the need for those surgeries to be performed.
You don't know if the 3 surgeries Lewis underwent within 9 months of the incident were caused by this incident.
Correct.
What other events in Lewis's record can you point to that suggest a cause for his need for surgery? If you don't understand that, I can rephrase it.
Well, I think I do. There's the illness suffered from 7/3 to 7/5, whatever that was. There was also further truck work done after the incident. I believe on 7/3, he loaded or unloaded and delivered another load. So there could have been something during the work he was doing after the incident.
You're aware Lewis does not actually load and unload the trucks himself, correct?
I'm not certain.
Okay.
There was some, I believe, changing of fluids under the hood or something like that. I think he referenced in his deposition, but there was some work on a truck that he had done.
You're not aware of any other incidents being reported, are you?
No,
No other collisions?
no,
No other falls or injuries?
no.
So you're not aware of any other traumatic event in the records besides the July 1st, 2020 incident?
Right. Besides what we just discussed.
What, Doctor, I believe in your previous deposition, you said something about diesthesia. I'm not Dyestheia.
Oh, dysesthesia?
Yes. What is that, Doctor?
That's painful sensations. Pins and needles, painful sensations when one touches something or something touches their skin.
Okay, so when you were talking about common symptoms of CCS earlier, such as tingling, numbness, pins and needles, that pins and needle sensation is the dysesthesia?
I think so. Yep. I think that's what I was referring to.
Okay. Are you aware of Lewis having any of those symptoms between July 1st and July 7th?
You know, there was something about numbness and tingling, I think of the left upper extremity or something like that. I don't know if I would exactly call that the type of dysesthesias that you experience in central cord, but he had some kind of sensory neurological issues.
And do you know when he started reporting those specific symptoms?
I think it was several days after the incident on 7/1.
You're not sure exactly what date that was?
I'm not gonna guess. 7/3-ish, something like that.
If Lewis reported some of those symptoms starting on the 2nd, or him noticing those symptoms on the 2nd, would that change your opinion in this case?
It wouldn't change my opinion, no.
When
In
you
the
were
sense- I'm sorry, in the sense that if they were related to the incident on 7/1, patients that have had central cord syndrome, the many which I've treated, will recant that these are immediate symptoms.
So in this situation, it's when you testified earlier, you indicated that you would have expected Lewis to show visible signs of not being able to move at the time of the collision or time of the incident, immediately after the incident.
Right, immediately after the incident, the injury should have been evident if it existed.
Okay. And I believe you previously had testified that you would have expected him to just have fallen out of the truck when he tried to get out. Is that correct?
If it was severe, yes.
Okay. Are you aware of Lewis at any point falling between July 1st and July 7th?
I am not.
So even when he got himself to the emergency room on July 7th, you're not aware of anything along those lines, are you?
No.
But you do agree that when he went into the emergency room that day, he did have central cord syndrome.
He was diagnosed with central cord syndrome. I have no reason to suggest it was anything other than that.
But you're not aware of those specific symptoms that you would have expected to see in this case occurring, do you?
Not immediately.
But you did notice them in his records at some point in those 7 days.
Yes.
Okay. Doctor, you agree that a concussion or a brain injury can occur from any sharp movement of the head and neck, correct? Doctor, do you have experience treating patients with concussion
I do.
and diagnosing concussions
I do.
and what causes concussions?
I do.
What can cause a concussion in a person?
Striking the head on something or getting the head hit by something.
So just hit, no movement, shaking your head around violently can't cause a concussion.
Generally, the head makes contact to move it.
All right, we're going to call a timeout. One of the jurors needs a break, and that is perfectly fine. So what we're going to do is I'm going to do my theatrical reading that you all can read back to me, and then we're going to take a very quick break. Members of the jury, while you're outside of this courtroom, do not talk about this case with anyone or conduct the investigation. You may only receive information about this case from two sources: the evidence, which will receive from witness and testimony and exhibits, and the law, which will receive from me and no other source. You all step out. Remember, use the bathroom in the hallway as well. As soon as you all are ready, knock on the door, and we will resume.
generally the head makes contact to move it violently, or something contacts the head.
So just a sharp movement of the head cannot cause a concussion.
Objective
Generally-
form as to sharp.
I think I understand what you're saying. Somehow the head gets jerked and a concussion occurs. Usually the head is struck by something, or the head strikes something in order to have that sharp movement occur.
But it doesn't have to actually strike a physical object, does it?
Yeah, I'm not exactly certain what you're asking. I apologize.
I'm asking, to cause a concussion, does someone's head have to be struck by a physical object, or can it just be caused by movement of the head, if that movement is severe enough?
I'm just not certain what would move the head in that way without it striking something.
Okay, well then let's just answer the simple question. To cause a concussion, must a head be struck by a physical object?
In the cases I've seen, yes.
So there's no cases that you've seen a patient suffer a concussion where their head was not physically struck by an object.
I can't recall any.
Okay. Have you ever treated a patient whose head struck something in their vehicle, whether it's the headrest or the steering wheel, and a concussion was the result?
Yes.
Okay. And are vomiting and nausea symptoms of a concussion?
They can be, but they're not specific.
But they can be.
Yes, they can be.
Doctor, I believe previously you testified that when we were asking about what caused central cord syndrome, if not the incident, you indicated that you're only hypothesizing about what exactly could have caused it. Is that accurate still?
Yes.
Okay. What did you do to test your hypothesis that the collision did not cause it? Maybe I'm not asking that right. Like, so my understanding of a hypothesis, and bear with me, my daughter's 5th grade or 6th grade now. Science fair project is all I know with, we got you come up with your topic, you develop a hypothesis about what you believe could happen, and then you test the hypothesis. So in this incident, your hypothesis is that the incident did not cause the collision. Did you do any testing of that to confirm your opinion?
Yeah, I watched that videotape, that dash cam, and Mr. Bennett doesn't have a central cord syndrome.
Okay.
Oftentimes, you don't have the result of an experiment when you're hypothesizing, but we had the result there. So when you test hypothesis, when you design experiments, you don't have the answer. But when we have this videotape, we have the clear answer that there was no evidence of a central cord syndrome in 36 minutes of that videotape.
If Mr. Bennett suffered an injury, sorry, my brain fritzed out there. So if Mr. Bennett suffered an injury in this incident, and it was not treated immediately, would you expect that injury to worsen?
Absolutely not. In a central cord injury, central cord syndrome, the classic example is the injury is worst at the time of impact. It occurs immediately and it improves over time.
Okay, so that's the classic presentation. Right?
That is the presentation definition, and that's what occurs.
Okay, so in Mr. Bennett's case, where he reported worsening conditions over the course of 7 days, you would say that's inconsistent with central cord syndrome?
Correct.
And yet the only diagnosis presented by Dr. Chapman at the time of his treatment on July 7th and 8th was central cord syndrome, correct?
Correct.
Did you do any investigation into any alternative causes of Mr. Bennett's central cord syndrome?
No.
you did not find any other evidence of some other alternative causation, did you?
No.
And I believe you tested earlier that it sounded like leaning your head back could cause central cord syndrome, correct?
Correct.
And I believe you characterized it earlier as a potentially trivial trauma. Is that accurate?
Lesser than you would expect in a high-speed motor vehicle accident. Maybe trivial is not fair if it causes a central cord syndrome, but it would be a milder event.
Well, let me rephrase this. I apologize. So when I say trivial, you're not commenting on the amount of force in this collision, correct?
No,
Then you're not commenting on the amount of G's or anything like that that were experienced in this incident.
I am not.
And instead of saying trivial, I assume would a better phrase be minor?
I think that's fair.
Okay. But it's not something like when you say acute, you don't necessarily mean something that is extremely violent. It could be something that's just the movement was just right.
Acute meaning here.
It happened at this one incident.
Yes.
Okay. And I believe some of the incidents you described as potentially minor in your previous deposition were leaning your head back in a barber chair or a dentist chair.
Yes.
I believe another one was something about being positioned for a surgical procedure and waking up with CCS.
Yes.
So
Usually-
effectively, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Usually these patients are prone and the head is inadvertently hyperextended.
Okay. So essentially, any movement where a person has to put their head way back can cause CCS.
As long as there's underlying stenosis. We find in these cases, there was some kind of underlying narrowing of the bony canal where the spinal cord runs.
And do you agree Lewis had underlying stenosis?
He did.
Okay. And are you aware that Lewis is indicating that his head did snap back during this incident?
I'm not aware of that, no.
Okay. And I believe we talked about the forces, but you're not, as part of your review, you did not look at the data or analysis of Mr. Bailey or Dr. Stern, did you?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So you're not going to be commenting, you're not commenting at all about what they've calculated in this incident with at least the forces with the guardrail.
No.
So is it your opinion that Lewis only suffered a sprain or strain of his neck in this incident?
Yes.
Did you see any evidence in the medical records that Mr. Bennett was faking his symptoms at all?
I wouldn't know.
There was no notes about that from his providers, was there?
I didn't see anything that suggested malingering.
And as part of your analysis in this case, you didn't speak to any of Lewis's friends or family members, did you?
No, sir.
You didn't speak to, did you speak to anybody from the company TCI?
No.
Did you speak to Mr. Bennett at all?
I have not.
And did you speak to any of Mr. Bennett's doctors, Dr. Chapman or Dr. Bendix or Dr. Maloon specifically?
No, sir.
Everything you received to review in this case, you received from the defense counsel, correct?
Yes, sir.
You didn't go out on your own and go searching for other facts or case-related details, did you?
I have not.
And you indicated that you had received the depositions of Mr. Bennett's medical providers,
Yes, sir.
and those were all taken I'd say at least 6 months prior to this deposition today, correct? I believe they were in 2024 and 2023.
I believe so.
So you've had a fair amount of time to review their testimony before being required to provide your opinions here today, correct?
I have.
Now, Dr. Frankel, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but if you're treating a patient, the main process you undergo is you meet with the patient, you take their history, you perform a physical exam, and then if there are diagnostic tests, you either review them or order them and then review them. Is that pretty accurate?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess that's the normal doctor procedure. Is there anything different about the protocol for neurosurgeons such as yourself?
For the most part, no.
Okay. And in this incident, you reviewed the medical records and the diagnostic films, correct?
See, there was medical records, diagnostic films, there was videos, and there was depositions, and there was medical records from the atrium, and then we had a list that we showed that there was from many different providers subsequent to that as well.
Okay. You never met with Lewis though, did you?
I have not.
You never examined Lewis?
I have not.
Now, if you were in one of those surgeries that you have to perform, that you might be on call for next week, have you met all those patients?
Well, that's a good question. So the elective patients I would have, the unfortunate patients that come into the emergency room, I would not have met.
Okay, so emergency room surgery, like what Dr. Chapman performed in this case, you might just meet the patient right then and there and realize you've got to make a call and then perform surgery, correct?
Correct, unless in horrible circumstances we're called into the operating room to do something where I haven't met the patient, but they're in extremis. So, I mean, these are the rare exceptions, right?
But typically, you're going to want to meet with the patient and examine them before you actually recommend surgery, correct?
Typically, I do. Yes, sir.
And you've done disability evaluations?
I have.
And you would agree that you wouldn't do a disability evaluation without meeting with and examining that patient, correct?
Correct.
Lewis has never been a patient of yours?
He has not.
And you've never treated him in any capacity?
I have not.
You're in this case as a witness on behalf of the defense after reviewing Mr. Bennett's doctor's records, correct?
Yes, correct.
What's an IME, doctor? An independent medical examination?
What is an IME doctor, you said?
So what is an IME doctor? An independent
comma
medical
doctor.
examination?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I apologize about that.
You know, it's like one of these cases where you receive all of the records surrounding treatment issue or prior and evaluating the status of the patient. And then you would examine the patient and come up with an assessment.
And you have no concerns about any of the treatment or surgeries performed on Mr. Bennett, correct?
Correct.
So an independent medical examination wouldn't have done you any benefit in this case.
You know, it's all of this stuff is information. Every single little bit of piece of information that we have is helpful in forming an opinion.
Okay, so an IME might have helped you make a better evaluation in this case?
I can't say one way or another because I don't have one. It depends on what it says.
Well, I guess that's what I'm asking. Might an IME have helped you make a better determination if you were able to perform one in this case?
Oh, if I were able to perform one.
Yes, sir.
I don't know.
So in this matter, my understanding from the first invoice we saw is that you were retained at least by October 2nd of 2021. Does that sound about accurate?
I think so. Yes, sir.
And so that was just over a year after this incident, correct?
Yes.
And now we're in June of 2025. So nearly, was it 3.5 to 4 years after you were first retained? Is that accurate?
I suppose. Yeah. I mean, October
I'm
20.
not trying to trick you on the math there.
Yeah. It 21, 25, about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years.
And in that 3.5 to 4 years, you were never asked to perform an IME on Mr. Bennett, were you?
No,
Did you ever request to perform one?
no.
So if you had requested one or had performed one, you could have done all 3 steps in the diagnostic process, correct?
Oh, so I could have examined him. Yeah, I would have been able to examine him.
But that wasn't done in this case, correct?
Not by myself, but his providers had done extensive examinations on him.
So you agree that Lewis's providers did a lot of extensive examinations on him?
Yes, they did.
Okay. Do you agree that they had more information in real time than you do?
You know, I think they had the wonderful thing about being able to review all of the records that I had is even in patients that are my own that I examine, I never have the extent of the records that I have. So I'm able to get a pretty incredible bird's eye view of the case, of what he went through, what his examinations were, and accident footage, which I would never have in my own practice. So I'm able to get I believe, a pretty accurate view of what happened and when.
You're not aware of Lewis telling his doctors a different version of events, are you?
I wouldn't know.
Okay. The records you reviewed don't suggest that, do they?
I haven't seen anything that would make me think that he was telling one person one thing and another, if that's the question, and somebody else something else.
And in the records you reviewed, including the depositions of the providers, you agree that each of the providers was given the same progression of symptoms by Mr. Bennett, correct?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if that's the case, but you know, his depositions seem to be a little bit different than the ED physicians at Atrium, and when he left Atrium, apparently he had a normal neurological exam with normal gait, his ability to walk, and that was different than when Bennett had seen him. So I don't, you know, there are differences as there are in medical records from time to time.
I think I was not clear on asking. So prior to the surgery on July 7th and 8th of 2020, Mr. Bennett provided the same progression of symptoms that he testified to Dr. Chapman. Isn't that correct? I mean, you reviewed Dr. Chapman's deposition, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And your understanding from the depositions of Dr. Bendix and Dr. Maloon that Mr. Bennett described the same progression of symptoms from July 1st, 2020 to July 7th, 2020 to them as well, right?
I believe so.
But did not each of those doctors indicate that that progression of symptoms is consistent with what they believe CCS would cause?
I believe each provider believed he had central cord syndrome.
I'm asking specifically about the progression of symptoms that we just talked about. did not each of those providers, Dr. Bendix, Dr. Malone, and Dr. Chapman, testify that the progression of symptoms that Mr. Bennett reported from July 1st to July 7th is consistent with what they expect of central cord syndrome?
And I disagree with their belief that central cord syndrome presents this way.
That's the follow-up question to that, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Doctor.
I believe they had, I'm sorry, I believe they believe he had central cord syndrome.
Mhm.
I believe that they believe what you're saying is that there was a progression of central cord syndrome.
Well, I believe that's what they testified to. So you disagree that what they testified to as his progression of symptoms was a correct presentation for central cord syndrome.
Correct.
At any point, did you make a request to speak to any of Mr. Bennett's treating providers?
I have not.
Doctor, do you believe you're an impartial witness in this case?
I believe so.
And you don't believe you have any independent leaning towards defense counsel in this case or the defendants in this case?
No, sir.
Your testimony business, is that called Neurovent LLC? Is that through your practice or is that separate? Or how does that work now that you're at the university?
It's a separate LLC that I did consulting work through.
Okay, you no longer do that?
I must be doing it because I'm here, but I am not actively taking on new cases with the current role I'm in, but I may.
Okay. Since you've transitioned, you're still trying to sort out that process. Is that a fair assumption?
Yeah, I'm different responsibilities now, and my career is a little bit different here. So I haven't been doing. I've been closing cases that I've been involved with, but I hadn't been taking on any new ones.
Okay. And so Neurovent, is that a for-profit business?
I am not terribly good at, it's not a we're not a 501c3, if that's what you're getting at.
It's not a nonprofit business that you're just doing for charity work?
No, it is not.
Okay. You obtain income out of Neurovent?
I do.
Okay. And how long did you still operate? So how long have you run Neurovent?
Since December 2010, but there are other consulting work that I started that for back then.
Okay. So for the last 15 years or so.
That entity exists since December 2010. That would be 15 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Or 14.
Or 14. 14 and a half.
14 and a half.
Yeah. What is the rate at which you bill? Actually, let me rephrase that. So I believe what the last fee schedule we had for you indicated $1,250 per hour to review records. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And for deposition or trial testimony, you're paid at the rate of $1,500 per hour, correct?
Yes, sir.
Have those numbers changed at all?
No.
Okay. And if you were to travel to trial, is it my understanding that you make $2,500 per hour of travel time?
Yes, sir.
And if you were to travel to the courthouse and sitting waiting to testify, that time alone, just waiting to testify, is billed at $1,000 an hour, correct?
Yes.
And so right now you're being paid $1,500 per hour for your testimony, correct?
I am.
Now back at your deposition in March of 2023, you indicated 3 invoices of $16,000, about $8,000, and about $5,600. So a total of right around $30,000 in March of 2023.
Yes.
How much have you billed since then, or how much have you billed total on this file at this point?
I haven't billed anything since then.
Okay, so you did not review any additional work prior to this deposition?
I have,
You didn't bill for it, though?
correct.
Okay. No conversations with defense, don't tell me contents of them, but no conversations with defense counsel prior to this deposition?
Um, I have had conversations with defense counsel since prior to this deposition. Yes, sir.
Okay. But you have not billed them at all since that 30,000 total in March of 2023?
Correct.
Okay.
Scott, I'm just gonna ask, do you mean bill that the actual invoice goes out, or he puts pen to paper to mark his time?
Either version of that.
So I have,
So
I have,
let me rephrase that. Have you documented time for which you will be charging them?
yes, sir.
And what is that total?
I don't have that in front of me. My apologies.
Okay. If you can tell me how many hours you believe you will be billing, if not the amount.
Well, it will depend on how long this goes for.
Mhm.
And then I believe on the 20th, I'll be waiting to hear from you guys if I'm going to be beamed into the courtroom. So there's that time.
Okay.
Obviously, there's no travel time. And then there's quite a few medical records that I've received, and I don't have the hour totals here, but there's considerable amounts of medical records and depositions that I've reviewed since that last bill.
Do you believe you spent more than 10 hours on reviewing those additional records?
I would believe so, yes.
More than 20 hours?
It's a possibility, but again, I don't know.
So you, aside from this deposition itself and whether or not you testify live via WebEx, you believe you have an additional amount of $15,000 to $30,000 in billing to submit?
It's a possibility.
Okay. But I think you said at least 10 hours, but you're just not sure about 20 hours.
I don't. I apologize.
No, that's fine. I'm just trying to get a total. So in this case, you believe, aside from this deposition and future testimony, your total billing is in excess of $45,000.
It very well likely could be. Yes, sir.
Okay. And we don't know how high because we don't know the final bills yet, right?
Correct.
Okay. How much of your work is attributable to defense hiring you versus plaintiffs?
You know what, the deposition in 23, I think I said 80-20, and that I would have to stick with that, but there really hasn't, over the last couple of years, there really hasn't been anything. So I just say 80-20.
Okay, so 80% of your work is on behalf of the defense.
It has been, yes.
Okay. And doctor, if you are called live at trial, is it possible for you to have those updated billing and invoice records available at that time?
And if I may make a note of that, I will. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Now, in that 80% of your work, if you were to determine that the injury is related to the incident for which you've been asked to investigate, your role in the case typically ends at that point, doesn't it?
It does.
So if your testimony, if your report to the defense back in October of 2021 had been, I believe Central Cord Syndrome was caused by the July 1st, 2020 incident, you wouldn't have been able to make $45,000+ in this case, could you?
Correct.
So Dr. Frankel, just going a little bit more over about your who hired you on this case. You were initially retained by a different firm, by Roger Harris at a different firm, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's not the same firm that's representing the defendants now. That was Swift Curry, and I believe this is Gray Russ now. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
With regard to the damage to Mr. Bennett's spinal cord, not the cause of that damage, but that damage itself, would you agree that the damage to his spinal cord is consistent with his current neurological problems?
It could be.
Do you think there's something else that's causing his current neurological problems?
I wouldn't know.
Nothing in the records that you can see?
Correct.
Okay. And now you talked earlier about the disc herniations being degenerative from C3 to C7.
Yes.
Would you disagree with Atrium or the records if Atrium's records showed that they were acute disc herniations?
Would you have that phrase? Would you have that record that I could look at?
Let me see if I can pull that up for you.
And that would be the combination of the CT and the MRI from 7/7/2020 that would give you the sum total of the picture.
Okay,
think
what
that's-
I'm
Oops,
what
sorry.
I'm no, I'm sorry. What I'm looking at, let me show you. And for this deposition, it'll be, I guess, Plaintiff's Exhibit 1. It's numbered a little bit different, so please ignore that. Do you see this record that's on the screen at this time?
Yes, sir, I do.
And that's page 20, but I'll show you this is from the Atrium certified records. On page 20, in the discharge summary, what's indicated as the primary injuries shows central cord syndrome, acute disc herniation C3 to C7 with myelomania as C3, C4. And I believe you testified earlier that you agree that there is evidence of myelomania at C3, C4. But do you disagree with their conclusion that he had acute disc herniations at C3, C7?
Yeah, I think that this statement contradicts itself in a nuanced way, and I think this was pulled from part of the radiology reports from 7/7, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so you disagree with that phrase in their records?
Yes.
Okay. I believe that's all the questions I have at this time.
I have further questions of you, Dr. Frankel. First things first, is the fact that my office is paying you for your time, does that affect your opinions in this case?
No, I'm under oath. I'm telling this as I believe it to be the case.
And your opinions in this case are based upon what?
The review of the medical record, review of the videos, review of radiology films.
And as you testified earlier, and this is summarizing, is this also relying upon your education, training, and experience?
Yeah, yes.
Plaintiff asked you some questions about whether you conducted an IME or not. Would an IME of Mr. Bennett change your opinion as to what caused his central cord syndrome?
No.
And as you testified earlier, you don't dispute that Mr. Bennett has central cord syndrome. Is that a fair summary?
Correct. I do not dispute it.
All right. So your testimony is limited to what caused his central cord syndrome.
Yes.
All right. And with respect to, and let me just restate this in a different way because plaintiffs adequately termed it properly, but with a reasonable degree of medical probability, do you know what did not cause Mr. Bennett's central cord syndrome?
Yes.
And other than, is there any way to know what happened between July 1st and July 7th of 2020 that Mr. Bennett may have suffered from? Is there any way to know?
Not from the medical record.
Okay. And if anything did happen between July 1 and July 7th that Mr. Bennett told his providers, we would have to assume he was telling the truth. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
In terms of the vomiting that has been the subject of the back and forth and some of the questioning, in your reading of the medical records, did any of his medical providers actually see him vomit?
No.
Okay, so in the medical records where it mentions any vomiting, that would have been based upon Mr. Bennett telling his providers?
Or in his deposition, if I remember correctly.
Okay, so in his deposition, if he testified that he vomited at some point between July 1st and July 7th, that would have been based upon Mr. Bennett stating that.
Correct.
Okay. And in terms of whether he was nauseous or complained of nausea at any point between July 1 and July 7, are you aware of any prior medical records or history where he had a history of nausea?
I don't recall.
Would knowing if he had nausea prior to July 1 be important to any opinions you offered as to whether nausea was caused by our incident or not?
It could help.
All right. Now, we talked about how Mr. Bennett presented to Atrium Healthcare and Dr. Chapman in North Carolina after July 1, 2020, as presenting with myomalacia. And I think you testified you had no reason to disagree that he presented to the hospital with myomalacia.
Correct.
All right. But do you know when that myomalacia started based upon that medical record?
You know, this is a chronic condition, myomalacia. This takes a while to develop. Nobody's really done a temporal study on it, but it's believed to be from long-term compression stenosis, very, very typically found at C3-4. So this all goes along with a long-standing compression at that level.
And with respect, though, to an impact with the spinal cord on July 1, 2020, did our incident cause the impact with the spinal cord?
Help me with that. Can you say that again?
Yeah, with respect to this impact of the spinal cord that is required for central cord syndrome, did the incident on July 1, 2020 cause an impact with the spinal cord?
It couldn't have to the extent required to see central cord syndrome.
All right. And in diagnosing central cord syndrome, does that rely upon objective, observed symptoms?
It does.
All right. And even if there was mild central cord system, would anyone observing Mr. Bennett at the scene of the incident been able to see symptoms of central cord syndrome?
Would you, I apologize. Could you ask that again?
All right. So even if there was a minor impact in central cord syndrome on July 1st, 2020, would anybody observing Mr. Bennett been able to see symptoms of central cord syndrome?
You should see some sort of dysfunction, or he should be relating some sort of dysfunction occurring at the time of injury.
And as you observed as a medical professional that treats central cord syndrome, did you see in any of that video any indication of dysfunction?
He absolutely did not have a central cord syndrome in that video at the time of injury, at the time of the incident.
If such testimony was offered by the accident reconstructionists and the biomechanic experts retained by defendants that say, at worst, the body and head move forward, would the body and head moving forward cause central cord syndrome?
No.
Well, Dr. Frankel, you are expressing opinions as to what the head has to do to cause central cord syndrome. Are you not?
Objection.
I am.
Well, let me just ask you that again. Dr. Frankel, what must the human head do and neck do for central cord syndrome to occur?
It has to move in extension backwards.
I've got no further questions.
Just to follow up. Did any of the records that you were provided, defense counsel in this case, show that Mr. Bennett had nausea prior to the wreck?
I can't recall.
Okay. So not to your recollection.
Not to my recollection.
And you're stating to reasonable degree of medical probability or certainty that the July 1st, 2020 incident did not cause the collision, correct? Did not cause the central cord syndrome in this to Mr. Bennett.
Correct.
Okay. But you can't state to reasonable degree of medical probability anything else that might have caused it.
Correct.
I think that's it. Appreciate it, Doctor.
Dr. Frankel, you just answered plaintiff's question that you can't state with a reasonable degree of medical probability or certainty what caused the central cord syndrome. Do you just recall that testimony?
Yes.
Why is it that you can't say with a medical degree of reasonable certainty or probability what caused it?
The medical record does not have a clearly identifiable episode besides the illness suffered 7/3-ish. But besides that, I don't have any evidence that there was a fall. Yes, of course, he slept as we all do, but there's no discussion of other episodes.
For us to confirm whether there was another cause for central cord syndrome, would you agree with me that we would have to be in Mr. Bennett's presence during July 1 to July 7?
Yes.
No further questions, Scott.
I have no questions.
No other questions.
How long do you anticipate your next witness, ballpark?
30 minutes, no more.
All right, is everybody good for another 30 minutes? If anybody needs a break, call it. Are you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, defendants are going to call their final witness, Brandon Ogletree.
Mr. Ogletree, I'll just remind you that we've watched other witnesses struggle with that microphone. Just get close and use it. Your voice will be louder than you're used to. Move it wherever you want. The thing will articulate in all kinds of directions.
Brandon, could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
All right, if you could tell the jury your full name, please.
My name is Brandon Ogletree.
And at this time, Brandon, this is your first opportunity to speak to the jury, so take a deep breath and let's just get after these questions, all right?
All right, let's go.
All right, tell the jury a little bit about who you are, where you grew up, went to high school, what you did after high school.
Okay, I went to Mary Personal High School in Forsyth, Georgia. I graduated in '04. I left there. I had a football scholarship to University of Idaho. So I went to University of Idaho for 4 years and graduated. And I was, like I said, I was on a football scholarship. And after that, I had a short stint on the professional side. So when I left there, I returned back to Forsyth, Georgia, and started a trucking business in '08.
When you said a short stint on the professional side, did you mean professional football?
Yes, sir. In and out of different training camps and in the NFL side, then explored the CFL level.
And you let that course run as far as it could?
Yes, I had injuries back in high school. I tore my ACL and my posterolateral in high school. So, uh, I kind of really just not necessarily gave up too early, but I just saw guys that were my age right now didn't know what they were going to do in life. So I just decided I need to get out and start something on my own.
Yeah, and in terms of graduating from the University of Idaho, what was your degree from the University of Idaho?
I majored I got my degree in business with a minor in communication.
Okay, and you just talked about getting out of your professional stint and wanting to start a company. What type of company did you start?
Well, I started a trucking business. I started a trucking business initially when I started. We was hauling. I bought 2 dump trucks when I graduated. Well, when we started, and I was hauling ash at the power plants in Juliet, Georgia.
Now, in terms of this business you started, was it just you who was running this business?
Can we approach?
I understand the guardrails.
You're good to go. We're good to go. All right.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Fletcher, following those instructions, you may ask your next question.
Yeah, in starting this company, was there someone else in this room that you kind of worked with in these companies?
Well, initially, it was my father. He was a mechanic, and so I have always been around, I guess, heavy equipment because he was a shop foreman in Forsyth over the school bus system. So I kind of always been in that, in the mechanical side of things.
Yeah. And who's this lovely lady in the gallery back there?
This is my wife, Chelsea Ogletree.
When did you all get married?
We got married in April the 16th, 2016.
Yeah. Do you have any children?
Yes, I have a daughter. She's 5. We also have had a son, but we lost him in a stillborn in 2019.
I'm sorry to hear about that, Brandon. So let's get back to talk about your trucking experience. How long have you been in trucking?
Well, it'll be 17 years now.
Okay. Obviously we're here because the company that's involved in the suit is Transcontinental.
That's correct.
Did you have a trucking company you started before that?
I did.
What was that company?
It was Iron Willed LLC
When did you start Iron Will?
in 2008.
What was the type of work Iron Will did?
Well, we're a sand and gravel company. I was certified with the state as a minority, so I bid on a lot of state contracts. We did a lot of resurfacing roads, like on the I-16 split, down in Houston County, Watson Boulevard. We resurfaced and redid the roads down the fall line. It's a fall line freeway down that way, so we did all the resurfacing on that from. I think I got certified around 2010 or 2011. So we did that up until 2019.
How many trucks did you have then with Iron Will?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled. You make it.
Well, at the height, I had about 17 trucks at the height.
How many employees did you have at Iron Will?
I had about 20.
Yeah. Now, the jury heard testimony previously of Jeff Evans starting with Iron Will. Is that where you first started using Jeff Evans as a driver?
I did.
Did you know Jeff prior to Iron Willed?
Did I know him prior to Iron Will?
Yes. Did you know of him or who he was?
I did. In this industry around Middle Georgia, you know, everybody has a trucking business, so it seems like you kind of cycle drivers. Everybody want to go to whoever was paying the most. So I probably know of him probably about 10 years prior to him coming to me.
Since Jeff is not here to defend himself, and because you worked with Jeff and was an employer, can you explain to the jury what kind of person was he?
Well, he was a hard worker. He was reliable. He was a family guy. I know he had a daughter, so he was basically a provider for his family.
And you obviously saw my opening where I put up a picture of Jeff Evans. Actually, it was Miss Dabbs who put up the photo of Jeff Evans smiling. Was that a pretty much a good representation of who Jeff was?
Yeah, he was just a down to earth guy, a true truck driver. You know, he lived and breathed trucking. Because I think his dad was a truck driver, so that's all Jeff knew was driving.
When you hired Jeff for Iron Willed, what documents did you ask him to provide to you?
Well, his CDL license from the start, valid medical card, MVR, and then also he filled out the application.
All right, and when you say medical card, is that also called a medical certificate?
Yes, medical certificate.
Yeah, if we could pull up Defendant's Exhibit 93, please. What's up on the screen? Is this a copy of the CDL, just commercial driver's license you received from Mr. Evans?
That's correct.
If you could take that down. If you could please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 94, please. Is this a copy of the application for employment of Jeff Evans for Iron Will?
It is.
Take that down, please. And if you could please pull up Defendant's Exhibit 95. Is this a copy of a motor vehicle report of Jeff Evans?
Yes.
All right. And it's dated 2018 at the top, right?
That's correct.
And you would have asked Mr. Evans to provide this to you.
Yes.
All right. If you could go back to Exhibit 94, please. Let's just slowly scroll through that. Stop right there. And in this application that Mr. Evans provided to you, he provided a listing of who he had worked for in the past.
That's correct.
All right. And based upon your understanding of knowing Jeff prior to hiring him at Iron Willed, the information here kind of jived with what you knew is his past experience.
That's correct.
If you could take that down, please. And did Mr. Evans provide you with a pre-employment drug test?
He did.
Okay, if we could pull up Defendant's Exhibit 97, please. It's just a copy of the 2018 a pre-employment drug test.
Yeah, that's it.
If we could scroll down. Does that indicate that he tested negative for drugs?
That's correct.
All right, and you accepted this employment drug test as accurate
I did.
and acceptable?
I did.
And then you talked about his medical card or medical certificate. Did he provide you with a copy of his medical card?
He did.
All right, if you could please pull up Exhibit 90. If you could expand that out. Do you remember receiving this card or something that looked like this card from Jeff prior to when you employed him?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and if you could please pull up Actually, Exhibit 89, please. This is a medical card, did I read this right? Dated September 19th, 2017?
Yes,
Okay, and this would have been a medical card you received from Jeff prior to your employment with Ironwood?
that's correct.
And in terms of this medical card or any medical card you received from Mr. Evans, what on it indicated that it was a valid certificate?
Well, he had a licensed medical physician.
And is another word for physician a medical professional?
That's correct.
Okay. And did this indicate to you it was signed by a medical professional?
Yes.
All right. Did Jeff ever show you medical equipment like syringes or glucose meter when he came to work for you at Ironwild?
No.
Did Jeff ever mention he had diabetes?
No.
Did he ever tell you that he had to go to doctor's appointments for any reason?
No.
And how long did Jeff work for Ironwild?
It was a little under 2 years.
And during that time while I worked for Ironwill, did you have any problems with him?
No, it's just he's a reliable guy.
Yeah, he showed up for work as required.
Yes, sir.
And during his time with you at Ironwill, did he ever show up looking to be sick or unwell?
No.
Now, Ironwill, you did Ironwill eventually end it, right?
Yes. Around 2000, the end of 2017 and going into 18, we was in high overhead with equipment, and during that time it was raining real bad during the peak time of the year. And of course, I'm in the dump truck business, so we couldn't haul dirt. Couldn't haul water. So we were still working on a lot of government work for asphalt, but that was on a small part of the business. The rest of it was hauling sand and gravel for concrete. So at that time, the concrete plants were staying full because they wasn't using any material. So it got to the point where my insurance was expensive because of all the equipment I have, but it was staying parked. So I got to the point where I had to choose whether or not to pay the driver's payroll or the insurance to keep going. So I decided to pay the drivers. And at that point, I lost equipment. So I had to just shut the company down. And during that time, a week after that, we lost our child to stillborn. And so it was just a season where I didn't have the money to be able to keep going. So it just really had to kind of sit back and kind of regroup. And that's basically what happened to Ironwill.
So am I summarizing correctly, you were kind of winding down Ironwill?
Yes, sir. We was winding it down.
Yeah. So where did Transcontinental rise out of this?
Well, I think during Father's Day, we gave my dad a gift certificate to a facial to get a facial in Forsyth on downtown. So he went in one day and did a facial, and I just got to talking to the lady that performed it, and she said, "Well, my husband and I, we've been in the trucking business," because she asked him what he did. We've been in the trucking business for over 20 years, and he's tired. He wants to just get a job. So my dad came back and told me, and she was willing to sell the company because at the time I couldn't go get insurance because I still had a balance out there in this arena of the insurance side. So the only way that we could keep going would be to buy another company that was already established that had positive loss runs where we could resume and be able to get some kind of income coming in to our family.
When you say resume what? You could resume what?
Well, basically resume being in the trucking business.
All right. Any of those contracts you had with Ironwill, did you carry those over to Transcontinental?
I did.
Okay. And how many contracts did you have that rolled over from Iron Will to
We had
Transcontinental?
2. I had one with C.W. Matthews, which is there in Marietta, Georgia, and I had another one with Concrete Supply over in Fayetteville.
Mr. Napier mentioned in his testimony that Transcontinental was a small company. How many trucks did Transcontinental have?
There's an objection. Hold on. What's the objection? Just gonna say.
Mischaracterization of testimony, and I really can't say the other part of it.
Well, then, come on up.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Fletcher, you may ask your next question, following my instructions.
So from Iron Will to Transcontinental, how many trucks did you go from?
Well, we went from 12 to 3.
And how did you get Jeff to go back to work with you?
Well, I gave him a call because some drivers, they kept calling me, wanting to know, what was going on. But at the time, I had no answer. So once the opportunity presented itself to purchase Transcontinental, I gave Jeff a call and basically just to check and see has he found other employment, and he said no. So he was willing to come back because we was doing the same scope of work.
And you called him back to bring him over because did you believe he was a reliable employee?
Yeah, he was reliable. Yes.
Okay. You still are a little nervous, and this kind of brings up a topic I want to touch on for the jury. You remember seeing the video deposition of you played to the jury. Do you remember that?
I did.
You looked nervous up there too, were you?
I was.
Yeah. Why were you so nervous?
Well, that was my first. I never done a deposition. I really didn't know what I was walking myself into.
Yeah. When you were in that deposition, did you even know what the extent of Mr. Bennett's claimed injuries were?
No, I did not.
And during that videotape deposition, did you listen to those questions intently or closely?
I did.
Yeah. And did you take that deposition seriously?
I took it serious. Yes.
And, it's hard to tell from a video that's been edited by the attorneys, but do you remember how long that whole deposition took?
Yeah, I think we started around 9:30 that morning, and they didn't let me go until 6:30 that afternoon.
Yeah. So 9:30, that's about what you recall when you started?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, we have the deposition in the box over there, and I went through it, and I counted or estimated over 1,000 questions. Does that sound about right from what you remember?
Yes, that sounds right.
And at the end of that deposition, were you tired?
Yeah, I had to sit in the parking lot an hour before I came back to Versailles.
Yeah, and even though you looked exhausted and that deposition lasted as long as it did you take every one of those questions seriously?
I did.
Now, coming back to what Mr. Evans provided you, commercial driver's license. You have a commercial driver's license.
I do.
All right. Tell the jury, what does a person have to do to get a commercial driver's license?
Well, I think it really depends on what class you want. Class B is which is like a 10-wheel commercial vehicle, like a school bus or a dump truck with 10 wheels. And a Class A would be a combination, which you have your truck and trailer.
Do you decide when you're choosing a CDL which class to, pun intended, steer towards?
That's correct.
All right. And so if you want to get your Class A, you have to study certain material.
Yeah, with a Class A driver's license, you would start off with your air brakes, and then you would go to your combination, which the combination is considered the trailer, and then you have your general knowledge.
Okay. And this information that you study, do you then have to take a test?
You do?
All right. Is it a rigorous test?
It is if you don't know what you're doing.
What happens if you pass the test?
Well, once you pass the written test, I think they changed the law about a year or two ago. Back then, once you pass the written test, you can go ahead and schedule your driving test, and you go right ahead and take it. But now, I think you still go take your written test, but you have to get a certain amount of hours from a licensed or certified examiner to be able to sign off on it to be able to go take a driving test at this point.
And then, if you recall, Mr. Napier brought up some things you didn't do and alleged that you were not supervising your driver like Jeff Evans. Do you remember his testimony?
Yes.
He said you didn't review this medical long form. Did you review a medical long form?
Well, he provided me his medical card, his valid medical card.
Why didn't you go ask for the medical long form from anybody?
Because I relied on the medical physician to do his job.
Mr. Napier also stated something to the effect that the long form was incomplete regarding whether Jeff was taking insulin. What do you think about the long form being incomplete?
Well, I still put that on the medical professional that if it was an issue on the long form, I would think they're certified and licensed to do their job.
Yeah, is the medical examiner supposed to ask about any inconsistencies with the long form?
Yes.
Yeah, and you've had with your CDL, you have also had to sit with the medical examiner.
I have.
All right, and during that back and forth with the medical examiner, does he ask you questions about your health?
Yes, they ask you a series of questions, and then of course, you take your blood pressure. You have to pee in a cup for a drug test, and then like I said, the mobility of your arms, legs, squatting. So at the end of the day, they go through that list with you in person.
And if something were incomplete on your medical long form, what would you have expected from the medical examiner?
They should raise questions or not give you a medical card.
Now, Mr. Napier also criticized you for not having a new full driver application when Jeff started at Transcontinental. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes, I do.
That application, when the jury saw it, had Frank written on it based upon his pre-employment. What was your explanation for that?
Well, Jeff was being Jeff when he wrote Frank because he thought it was obscure debate to do that because he felt like, we were doing basically the same thing and he already had everything already filled out once with me. So that's what I have with that.
Yeah, and then Mr. Napier also stated that you didn't get a new MVR for Mr. Evans when you started Transcontinental. Why not?
Well, before Jeff set foot in the truck, you have to consult with the insurance company. The insurance company runs a MVR to let you know if the driver will qualify to be able to be insured.
So did you have that copy, the MVR from Mr. Evans? Did he hand you that or did you get it from someone else?
Well, he handed me this one. The other one basically came from the insurance company, my agent.
And this one that you have that was given to you, was that from when he was at Iron Willed?
I believe it was from when he was with Iron Will.
Yeah. What year was that?
2018.
And tell the jury, what are the documents you have up there?
Well, this is the valid medical card that I had. Of course, this is the application. This was his clean MVR. Then, of course, this is his driver's license.
So in 2019, with respect to the MVR, that was an MVR the insurance company ran.
That's correct.
Okay. And even though you didn't have it, that was something that was conducted.
That's correct.
All right. If we could pull up the 2019 MVR, please. I forget the exhibit number. 96. And as you sit here today, that's what you now see as this clean MVR for 2019.
That's correct.
All right. Now, where does the driver go to get his medical card?
To a licensed provider, a medical license provider.
Is another word to describe it a licensed medical professional?
Professional, a physician, yes.
Yeah. And where does a driver find that medical professional?
Well, you can go, also you can go on the database on the DOT or the Federal Motor Carrier database to find a licensed provider.
And is this place on the internet, is it also called the National Registry of Certified Medical Examiners?
That's correct.
All right. And did you send Mr. Evans to go see the medical examiner?
I did not to a specific one, to the one that he normally would go to get his medical card.
But he went to one.
He did.
And as far as you sit here today, do you understand that medical provider, Dr. Hayden, was listed on the registry?
Yes.
To your knowledge, let's talk about the drug test that you got from him.
Okay.
To your knowledge, does that drug test show if anybody has diabetes?
No, it does not.
All right. Does that drug test show if anyone has an elevated glucose or an A1C, as we've heard from various people?
No.
And during Jeff's employment with either Iron Willed or Transcontinental, did he ever look like he had a medical issue that disqualified him from driving?
No.
At Transcontinental, did he ever tell you he had diabetes?
No.
Did he ever, to your recollection, ever come to work looking disoriented?
No.
Did he ever come to work looking like he was excessively sweating?
No.
Did he ever come to work with this sweet smell or odor about him?
No.
I think you need to tell the jury here, if he ever showed up unwell to work, would you allow him to drive?
No.
Was he ever in any accidents that you recall?
No, it was not.
Let's get to the incident that brings us here today. I think you touched upon it in your video deposition, but you didn't explain in the video deposition. On July 1, what was Mr. Evans' route?
Well, he has free range. It just really depends on what the concrete plant needed, whether or not they needed sand or rock. So if he needed sand, he would drive to Roberta, Georgia, and come back to Fowler Flemister, which was a 28 mile run. And then if he needed rock, we would get it from Bolingbrook, and which was another 10 miles back to the plant.
Yeah. And as we understand, where this incident kind of took place was in Perry, Georgia.
That's correct.
Yeah. If we kind of looked at a map and drew a line from where Mr. Evans picked up gravel across to where he dropped off the gravel, from that line to Perry, about how far is that?
It's roughly about 40, I want to say between 40 and 50 miles.
And where did Jeff live at the time of this incident?
He lived in Jackson, Georgia.
When is the first time you heard about this incident?
The officer, I don't know his name, but the officer called and told me that I had a truck that was down in Perry, Georgia, that I had a very sick driver that he thinks that he was having a diabetic episode because he said that his father was a diabetic and he recognized the symptoms when he came in contact with Jeff.
All right. So the first time you hear about this incident is from a police officer.
That's correct.
All right. So when you hear this call from this police officer, are you thinking that there might have been some collision involved?
Well, of course I did at the time, yes.
But that was just based upon what the officer did. Is that based upon what the officer told you?
Which can you say?
Yeah. Your understanding of what happened was based upon the information you were getting from
Yeah,
the
that's correct.
officer.
That's correct.
So after that conversation with the officer, who's the next person you talked to?
Well, after I picked the truck up, then the next day, Mr. Cadmus called me. I want to say about 8 o'clock, 8 or 9 o'clock the next morning, and he basically told me that
Objection, Your Honor.
All right, there's an objection.
It's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted. It goes to what he believed and what knowledge he had, meaning Mr. Ogletree.
All right, so we're not offering Cavanaugh's testimony for the truth of the matter asserted. Your question again was what conversation? You may ask that again, but you need to be, you're gonna need to lead him, and you're gonna need to be very careful, and you're gonna need to answer the question that's exactly asked.
okay.
Otherwise, so I'm gonna withhold the ruling and see if they can walk that line. If not, I will sustain that objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay.
All right, you may offer limited, not for the truth of the matter asserted hearsay.
All right, Brandon, just for the jury, who's Mr. Cavanis you're referencing?
Was Mr. Bennett's employer.
All right, and because the judge is giving me this latitude, in this conversation with Mr. Cavanis, the information that was provided to you, would this information then explain what you did in response to that information?
That's correct.
It would help explain to the jury why you did what in terms of responding to about any claims for damage, right?
That's correct.
Responding to any questions about why someone may have paid for a repair to a guardrail.
That's correct.
Okay. And so in this conversation with Mr. Cavanis, he told you in his words what happened, right?
That's correct.
All right. In his words, how did he describe it to you?
Well, he said that, of course, Jeff ran his driver off the road, that he hit a guardrail, but it did very minor damage.
Did you have any information to dispute that when you heard it?
I did not.
And did you later have communications with Mr. Cavanis other than telephone?
Yes, he was texting back and forth.
Okay. And if we could bring up Exhibit 84, please. Defense 84, sorry.
And does that conclude, and this is also part of that line of questioning?
Yes, Your Honor.
I tell you what, I'm just gonna charge the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this portion of the testimony is being provided, not for the truth of the matter asserted, but for the impact on the hearer. So the objection is sustained. You may follow that line, and then I'm gonna get out of it. So, Mr. Fletcher, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, what is up on the screen?
That's Mr. Cadmus. Him and our interaction on the text.
And you recognize the phone number up at the top?
Yes.
All right. And just let's go through this test. If we could play it, please. Press stop here. There's one instance where it says, got one estimate, truck's at a second shop to try and get a better price. I know this guy, he's a good guy, he just can't read and write, but he always gives us. When you were reading that, what did you understand what was being told to you?
Well, we're basically trying to get an estimate because he wanted to go ahead and get the truck fixed so he can go right. For what he told me, that he wanted to go back out to work that following week.
All right. And then did he show you a photograph of what you thought was the truck, his truck?
Yeah, he did. He sent me about 3 pictures of what the damage of the truck.
Could you forward that, please? Pause there. What is that being shown in this text string with Mr. Cavanis?
Well, that was the estimate that he provided for the truck that's on the text thread.
And at that time, did you have any information to disagree with that?
No, I did not.
If you could please play. And is that the estimate blown up?
That's correct.
Okay. Please keep going. And did I read that right? Can you send me a picture of the damage?
Yes.
All right. And is that a picture of the first time you've seen a truck with damage on it?
That's correct.
All right. And is it fair, based upon this information you were receiving, you just didn't have any reason at that time to dispute it?
No, I had no reason not to believe it.
If you could take that down, please. Now, in any of your conversations with Mr. Cavanis, did he ever indicate to you if Mr. Bennett were hurt?
No, he did not.
Okay. How about much later after these initial conversations?
No. I don't know how far to. So I could go ahead and keep explaining. I just want to say nothing.
Let me help you along here. When was the first time that you knew that Mr. Bennett may have been hurt in this incident?
I think around I want to say the 8th or the 9th, I got a letter from an attorney basically stating that Mr. Bennett was suing us.
All right. And what did you do after you learned that Mr. Bennett was suing you?
I gave Mr. Cadmus a call.
And what was in that conversation, based upon what Mr. Cavanis was telling you, is that how you based your actions after that and what you did?
That's correct.
Okay. And what did Mr. Cavanis tell you in that call?
Well, basically he just said that I guess when Mr. Bennett returned,
We're going to have to embrace a hearsay objection.
All right, so this is a new topic, Mr. Fletcher. Is this still non-hearsay for the impact on this hearer?
It goes, Your Honor, to the same reasonings of why he paid for the invoice and why there was a payment of a guardrail.
Okay. So the objection is sustained to the extent that it is hearsay. I will allow Mr. Fletcher to continue asking these questions. I'll remind the jury that this testimony regarding Mr. Cavanis is being specifically tendered to you all for its impact on Mr. Bennett, not for the truth of the matter asserted. And I will allow plaintiff to clear that up in closing. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Now, in this telephone conversation with Mr. Cavanis, after you received this letter of representation from plaintiff's counsel, if you could just summarize again what you recall from that conversation.
well, Mr. Cavendish, he said, he was in disbelief. He just said that once Mr. Bennett returned to this yard, they got in a heated argument and he decided to quit.
Speculation about what Mr. Bennett was saying or thinking or doing at that time for the reasons behind it.
All right, I'll let you clear it up and cross. You may continue. And I think I said Bennett a minute ago. I meant to say Mr. Ogletree.
Yeah, I appreciate
If I
that, Your
didn't
Honor.
misspeak, I'm sorry. I'm sure Terry got that.
You may continue about the conversation you had with Mr.
Well, he just said that, like I said, they got in a heated argument once Mr. Bennett returned to his yard, and he hasn't heard from him since then, and that he was gonna see what he can find out, but I never heard back from Mr. Cavanis after that.
All right. So was there any information you heard from Mr. Cavanis about what Mr. Bennett had told him in his routes?
No.
All right. In the conversation with Mr. Cavanis, did the conversation with Mr. Cavanis kind of form a basis as to why you entered or drafted a settlement agreement with Mr. Cavanis?
Well, it was just when we got the estimate. So instead of just sending him money, we just went online, just drafted up just an invoice, a contract, just to help us out on once we send him the $4,700. Send him that we had something that we could show the insurance company if he tried to double back to file a claim for the same repair work. So that's basically what we did.
Did you know what you were doing?
No.
All right. In hindsight, do you think you probably should have called someone like me or Mr. Myers to advise on something like that?
Yeah, hindsight 2020, yeah.
Yeah. Did you intend in that agreement to have Mr. Bennett waive his personal injuries?
No,
Okay. And did you just, and I think I summarized, so you just grabbed this release off the internet and just plugged in names?
that's correct.
Now, you heard Mr. Bennett in his testimony talk about what he believed happened during this incident.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and you testified earlier that you operate Class A motor vehicles like Mr. Bennett did.
I do.
All right. Do you recall Mr. Bennett talking about how this fifth wheel impacted the control of his truck and somehow made his accident seem more severe?
Wait, you were ready, wait.
Yes.
Yeah. Can you tell the jury, is there an actual fifth wheel underneath this truck?
Yeah, it's a fifth wheel. Basically, you have a kingpin that it slides on the fifth wheel and locks. So it depends on what kind of trailer you're using. For what he was driving was a 53-foot trailer, which the fifth wheel does come on. So the fifth wheel does pivot, but in order for a fifth wheel to slide, it's a button inside of on the dash that you push that when you go across the scale, it's a bridge law that you have to, depends on how much weight in the truck. It's DOT can give you an overweight ticket. So in order for a fifth wheel to slide, you have to push manually push air switch in the truck in order to release the fifth wheel slide, and then the truck in the trailer, the fifth wheel stay still, but the truck will slide back and forth on the slide. So for what I heard from Mr. Bennett, the fifth wheel cannot slide when you actually applying the brakes for a tractor trailer.
Yeah. Are you aware, and this is kind of a rhetorical question, sitting through this entire trial, have you heard any expert demonstrate any example of how this fifth wheel could have impacted this incident?
No, sir.
Now, also, going back through Mr. Bennett's testimony, did you find anything odd or inconsistent about how he described repairing this bumper?
Yes.
If you could please pull up Plaintiff's Exhibit 6 and expand that out a little bit. What did you find odd or inconsistent about Mr. Bennett's testimony?
That circular hole right there on the bumper at the lower on the bumper.
Am I pointing you to it? Okay?
Yes, sir.
Right there?
Yes.
What is that?
That's your tow hitch hole. So that hole, you have it's a metal rod with a hook on it. So if you get stuck in that particular truck or you have to get pulled out somewhere, you pop the hood. On the passenger side of the hood is 2 tow hooks that's on a Freightliner Cascadia that it has a 15-16 bolt. You bag it out and you pull your tow hook out, and the tow hook is that's it. The tow hook is that long. And so what it does, it goes in and you turn it kind of clockwise, probably about 45 degrees, and it locks in. But you cannot put your hand through that. My daughter can't put her hand through that hole in order to tie anything up.
In that, you actually answered the question I was going to pose.
No.
Is it feasible for someone to put their hand through that hole to then tie it behind the bumper with wire or a coat hanger?
There's no way possible.
And so, and again, what I'm holding in my hand, what is this?
That's it. That's your tow hook for the Cascadias. It's one on each side.
Brandon, it's not what I think, but I think you did well compared to that video deposition, but you still have to sit here and answer questions from these fine folks. So I'd ask you to answer them confidently and honestly. And then if there's anything else I need to follow up, I will. But thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Ogletree, as the plaintiffs are getting ready to ask you questions, I'll just remind you again again, sometimes in these moments, y'all tend to talk over each other. Y'all being just generally the witness and the other side. Just make certain to be nice and good and slow, take a breath, let Ms. Terry take down it all, so we can all make a good record.
Okay.
All right, floor is yours.
Thank you.
Mr. Ogletree, Mr. Evans started working for you in 2018, correct?
That's correct.
That was at Iron Willed,
That's correct.
completely separate company from TCI, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier that you winded down Iron Willed as a result of issues between paying the drivers or insurance, right?
That's correct.
It wasn't because of fines you received from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. was it?
No, sir.
May I approach?
You may. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. You may ask your next question according to my instructions.
So fines from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations was not one of the reasons why Iron Willed was forced to shut down?
No, sir.
And so you reopened as TCI under your wife's name, not under your name?
That's correct.
Okay. And that wasn't in any way a reason to avoid further regulation, was it?
No.
Okay. You agree that both your driver and yourself have to know and follow the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're not going to disagree with that, right?
No.
Okay. And, that burdens on both the driver to comply with it when they're getting qualified for driving the truck. Well, let me just start with that. That burdens on the driver for when they're getting qualified, correct?
That's correct.
And for the company to ensure that they know the driver's qualified, right?
Yes.
And I believe in your previous deposition, you acknowledged that there are industry standards that you try to follow as a trucking company, correct?
Well, the standards from the Federal Motor Carrier.
So just the standards from them, not industry standards.
Well, the industry standards are the Federal Motor Carrier standard.
Okay. And when you say that you understand that the company has to make sure their driver's qualified, you mean, what do you mean? Just making sure the documents are there and they exist?
No. No, they have to have a valid medical card, have commercial driver's license, a drug test, and an application, and be able to be functional enough to, physical enough to drive a motor vehicle. Because if not, you won't be able to get your medical card to be able to qualify.
Did you do anything to verify that the medical card was properly certified?
Yes.
Just looking at it?
And then on the registry.
So you didn't go to the doctor and request the long form, correct?
No, sir.
You have the right to request it if you want to, don't you?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Can we pull up Exhibit 37? And go to page 468. And can we zoom in on 391.41, please? And so that is where I assume your understanding is that the medical certification is sufficient, correct? That code section?
Yes.
Okay. And can we show, I believe it's the top right corner of the next page, that Department of Transportation interpretation. In that interpretation, that agrees that the medical certification is by the medical examiner, right?
That's correct.
Does it not also say further on that the motor, like in the last sentence, the motor carrier is also responsible for ensuring that only medically qualified drivers are operating CMVs in interstate commerce.
Yes.
Okay. You disagree that you had to do anything beyond looking at that medical certification?
Well, the medical provider provided a valid medical card that he was capable and healthy to attain a medical card, a valid medical card.
You understand that, you can take that down. You understand that insulin-dependent drivers need to go through more rigorous testing, correct?
Well, listening over the last couple of days, yes, but his medical provider gave him a valid medical card, and I didn't know.
Okay, so the question I'm asking you is, you understand that the regulations put more stringent requirements on insulin-dependent
Yeah, that's
drivers?
correct.
Okay. You were not aware of that at the time that Jeff was driving for you, were you?
Aware of what?
That there were any restrictions on insulin-dependent drivers?
Well, I didn't know he was a diabetic.
Well, I believe in the testimony we heard that we played earlier, that at the time we took your deposition, you didn't know there were any regulations that applied to diabetic drivers.
Well, maybe not at that time.
So at the time Jeff was driving for you, that this diabetic driver was on the road for your company, you didn't even know that there were regulations limiting the ability for insulin-dependent drivers to drive commercial motor vehicles?
No.
So after Jeff started working for you, let's start 2018 with Iron Willed. How often did you ride with him?
Well, initially, when I do hire someone, I would ride with them, just like kind of like you would do on a road test. And after that, with someone with that type of experience, I wouldn't ride with them anymore after that.
So you ride with him at least once or twice?
Yeah, initially when I hire someone.
Mm-hmm. So how often do you actually would you see Jeff on a weekly basis in person?
It just depends if he needed repair work on his truck. He would stop up at the shop and or being able to turn his tickets in. It depends if he turned his tickets in every day or once at the end of the week.
So you would see him a couple times a week in person?
Yeah, most likely.
And that's all through 2018 when he started working for you until his termination in, was it August or late August or September of 2020?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you ever do any inspections of his vehicle with him?
No, I make all the drivers leave the trucks on the yard. So if they don't have anything immediate that they need to be done, we would in the afternoons go after they supposed to do a post trip. We go down there and do another extensive post trip, so I don't waste my time the next morning.
So they would do a post-trip inspection, then you would go back out and do a post-trip inspection?
That's correct.
So you would inspect the vehicles after they left them?
Well, I had I would, and then my father, he's a mechanic, so we tag team the maintenance side of it.
Do you ever inspect the insides of the vehicles?
Not necessarily, unless we had to get in there and start a truck up.
Okay, so essentially after the first couple days that Jeff started working for you, you were never inside his vehicle again until you had to move it after this incident.
Well, like I said, unless we have to get in the truck and physically start it up or move it for whatever reason, that would be the only time that I would enter the cab.
At any time where you saw him in person, did you ever see him with a diabetes monitor on his arm?
No.
And you heard Dr. Isaac's testimony earlier that Mr. Evans had a Libra monitor for monitoring his diabetic condition.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Yes.
But you never saw him wearing that
No.
monitor? You never saw him carrying his insulin bag?
No.
You never saw him check his insulin?
No.
You never saw him loading his truck up in the morning?
No,
Never ever saw him getting out of his truck and leaving at the end of the day?
no, because we kept the truck on a different yard.
So you never saw his bag of insulin at all with him?
No,
You agree that Iron Willed and TCI are completely different companies, correct?
that's correct.
And you agree that the FMCSRs require each company to do the pre-qualification requirements, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you agree that TCI did not do all the steps that the FMCSRs require to qualify Jeff as a driver?
Yes, but we had I had his valid medical card. I had his driver's license. Of course, we had an application. So I think that we had all the proper paperwork.
Can we pull up, let's talk about those applications for a second there. Can we pull up, I believe it's let's do the TCI application first. That should be on Exhibit 18. Can you just zoom in on that for me, please? This is the application for Jeff to work for you at TCI?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, and just scroll down there for me. Does he even put his address on this form?
No,
Okay, just keep on scrolling. Who's Frank?
Frank Perez is he's a hauler that we've been hauling with. I've been hauling with probably about 15 years. That's where he came from back in 2018. He came from Frank's company to mine.
Okay, so he didn't put prior work experience as Iron Willed because he didn't consider it a separate company, did he?
And I think, oh, okay, can I talk?
Objective form mischaracterizes testimony.
So I guess, and I think that's the reason why he filled it out the way he filled it out, because he's basically working for me the same. So Frank really was the last company, I guess, in his mind that he worked for, because he was back working for the same person. So I guess that's the reason why it was his personality. That's what he felt.
Can you pull up, I think it might have been Defendant Exhibit 94, the application from Iron Willed? Is there, just zoom in on that a little bit for me. And I know we can't see the address on there. Do you have any idea if his address changed between when he started working for you and when he transitioned over to TCI?
I'm not for sure.
Okay, scroll down a little bit. Actually, just looking at the, can you put them up side by side, actually? So the one on the right, that's Iron Willed, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you scroll down to page 2 on Iron Willed? Page 3. When you're looking at those there, do you just think they scroll back up to the first page, actually? When you're comparing how James is filling out that form, Jeff James Evans, you're not interpreting that handwriting as a deterioration of his diabetic condition, are you?
Objective form, I mean, it lacks foundation, Your Honor.
All right, rephrase your question.
Do you have any interpretation as to, beyond he just didn't take it seriously, as to why that second form looks so haphazard?
No.
The inability to circle full time in smooth lines, any explanation for that?
No.
The jaggedness to how he's writing his name compared to the other form, any explanation you have for that?
No.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. Now the attorney is testifying as an
expert.
Members of the jury, nothing I say is evidence, nor is anything the attorneys say evidence. Evidence is the testimony from the stand. You may move on to your next topic.
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor. If you had seen, well, let me ask you this. You don't, it's none of your business if Jeff had diabetes. Is that your position?
Yeah, I don't, no, that's not my business. That's his, that's between him and his healthcare provider.
So you don't want to know if he has diabetes?
Well, no, I just think that's his personal, that's what he's personally dealing with in life. Because I'm sure I'm sure several people that maybe have that has diabetes. I mean, this is what they're dealing with.
You understand that we talked about earlier about there's restrictions on diabetic drivers operating, you can take that down, operating commercial motor vehicles, correct?
I understand.
But you still don't want to know from your drivers if they have diabetes.
Well, with the healthcare provider, the certified healthcare provider, if they feel that they are capable and can pass a medical examination, I'm not a professional doctor or healthcare provider or healthcare physician to make that decision.
Can we pull up Exhibit 27, please? And I think let's go to page 22. So this is Mr. Evans' long form from 2018. Can we just zoom on the upper left section, please? So did you look at this form, or actually page 28, or 27, please, the 2019 form? Same section. After Mr. Evans's incident with Mr. Bennett, did you go back and look into this at all?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. Even after you testified earlier that Officer Maddox told you that your client or your driver was diabetic, you didn't go back and double check to see if there was something going on with his long form?
Objective form, I don't think he specified who the officer was he spoke with.
Rephrase your question.
You heard Officer Maddox testify the other day that he spoke to you.
Yes, sir.
Do you know whether that's the same officer who told you about that, about the diabetic condition of your driver?
If he was the officer that called the ambulance, yes, sir, they did.
Do you have any reason to believe he was not the officer?
No, sir.
Okay. So you remember being told by an officer that your driver had diabetic shock on the side of the road and should not be driving. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. And after you were told that, you did not do any investigation to check into his diabetic condition, did you?
No more than what Mr. Jeff informed me on.
So you relied on your driver to tell you that he didn't have an issue with diabetes?
Yes.
You did not go back and look at this long form to double check whether or not he had acknowledged insulin required or not, did you?
No.
If you had seen Mr. Evans's insulin supplies, or his insulin monitor, would you have stopped him from driving?
Well, I think that would have been up to the medical provider, the medical physician to issue him.
I have to object to non-responsive, Your Honor. I asked what he
Your
would do.
Your Honor, he's got to let him finish his answer. I mean, he may not like his answer, he can follow up.
No speaking objections, sit down. He's your cross,
Mhm.
so answer the question. If you don't like his answer, ask him a different one after he's finished.
Do you want me to repeat the question? Or are you, okay.
That's fine.
If you had seen Jeff's bag of insulin supplies or his insulin monitor, would you, on behalf of TCI, have stopped Jeff Evans from driving?
He had a valid medical card, so the physician said that he was certified qualified to drive. So I wouldn't have known.
So no, you would not have stopped him from driving.
No, because he had a valid medical card.
Okay. Did you place any punishment onto Jeff Evans after that accident?
No, I did
after
not.
the incident on July 1st, 2020?
No, sir.
And he kept driving without any further restrictions?
Yes.
Okay. And was that up until his subsequent accident about a month and a half later?
Your Honor, I'm gonna object. That has nothing to do with the incident at question in this trial.
Yes.
And that's the time when you terminated his employment after the second incident
Well, I mean, we had nothing else to drive.
because of the accident he was involved in?
That is correct.
Now, you spoke a little bit about being in contact with the owner of Mr. Bennett's truck. You were never in contact with Mr. Bennett himself, were you?
No.
And that agreement that was referenced in your attorney's direct, you prepared that document, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And in your previous testimony, did you not indicate that your reasoning for doing so was to keep your insurance company out of it?
Yes, sir. In most cases, that's what you're gonna do. With something that small of a incident where Mr. Cadmus said that happened.
But none of the things that he told you were told you by Mr. Bennett, correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Bennett didn't send you any pictures directly, did he?
No, he did not.
The statement in the middle of the agreement that you put together indicates a guardrail impact, correct?
Yes.
And the guardrail repair bill that was paid on behalf of TCI, that also was attached to the police report, the trooper report in this case, correct?
Well, I mean, I did not pay for a guardrail.
It was paid on behalf of TCI, correct?
I'm assuming the insurance company paid it, but I didn't pay it.
Okay, but, okay. It was paid on behalf of TCI.
Oh, okay.
That's how I was trying to avoid saying your insurance company paid for it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So that bill was also paid, correct?
Yeah.
And there was no investigation that you're aware of at that time to, contradict any of those facts, correct?
That's correct.
And the incident report that went along with that guardrail repair showed the trooper indicating there was a guardrail impact.
Your Honor, he's stating something that my client has said he didn't even know about, whether something accompanied an invoice or anything.
Okay.
He's putting testimony as if it's facts.
Answer it if you can, don't if you can't.
Repeat the question, please.
No problem. The accident report that was attached to that guardrail repair, that indicated an impact with the guardrail as well, correct?
Objection, facts not in evidence.
Overruled.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Have you looked at the accident report in this case, the one that we put into evidence here?
No.
No? Okay. Do you have any reason to disagree with the accident report itself and what the trooper did to investigate?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
After all the facts have become evident here, you would agree with me that Mr. Evans lied on his medical certification questionnaires, correct?
Calls for speculation, Your Honor.
Overruled.
I don't know.
You heard the testimony from Dr. Isaacs.
Right.
Looking at Mr. Evans's medical records,
That's correct.
showing that he was insulin diabetic, insulin-dependent diabetic since at least 2015, correct?
Yes, that's what he
And
said.
that's at least 3 years prior to starting to work with you.
Okay.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And on those same medical certifications that we just looked at, those long forms, at no point did Mr. Evans disclose that he was insulin dependent, did he?
No.
So you would agree that those medical certification questionnaires that he gave to his provider were not accurate?
Yes.
Wait 1 second, Your Honor.
Sure.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Promise you, Mr. Ogletree, we're almost done.
No problem.
What did you rely on to make sure that Mr. Evans was medically qualified to drive a motor vehicle? I mean, a truck.
I relied on the licensed medical.
If anything was not filled out correctly in this long form, who would you expect to have had a conversation with Mr. Evans about the incomplete forms?
It would be the medical physician.
And there was questions from Mr. Myers about what you knew or did not know about Mr. Evans' diabetes. What document did you rely upon from Mr. Evans to indicate to you that he was qualified to drive, if he had diabetes or not?
I mean, I relied on his medical card.
Yeah. Now, we talked about this guardrail payment that was made by the insurance company. And you heard during this trial the 911 calls from Mr. Bennett. Do you recall those 911 calls?
Yes.
And do you recall what mile marker he was passing?
I believe it was the 127.
Yeah. And did you hear in the 911 call from Mr. Bennett that he was nearly run off the road?
That's correct.
All right. Back in 2020, did you have any information at that time indicating to you that there was some contact with the guardrail?
No, the only information that I had was the pictures that Mr. Cadney sent me of a truck with a busted bumper.
Yeah. And getting back to this payment of the guardrail, if the invoice from the Department of Transportation indicated that it was a invoice for repair to mile marker 134, did the DOT get the insurance company pay for damage that was unrelated to this accident?
I believe so.
Sounds like the DOT got away with it. Mr. Myers brought up this accident that occurred after the incident of July 1st. Please describe for the jury, what was this other accident?
Well, in Forsyth, on exit 185, a little past 185 where the quick trip is in Forsyth, that stretch of the interstate is concrete. So it's a lot of accidents that's basically happening right because like most of the interstate is asphalt. So with asphalt, with the oil spills and that kind of stuff, it seeps in the ground. But with on concrete with oil and all kind of other liquids, it sits on top of the concrete. So Jeff, it was raining real bad one day. That I want to say right there in that area, right when you pass the Shoney's exit in Forsyth, it goes from a 5-lane to a 4-lane. So when it's raining or just traffic, traffic stops because of the lanes going from a 5 to 4. So what happened was that particular day was raining real bad. The traffic backed up because it was an accident up further. And basically what happened was once he came over the exit of 185 where the Shoney's exit, traffic had stopped. And with that concrete, with an empty trailer, and it was an empty dump trailer, which is, he probably empty at weight. He was maybe 28,000 pounds with an empty trailer. Once he applied the brakes, the trailer jackknife. And basically when it jackknife on that concrete on the interstate, he went off on the side of the road and basically totaled the truck out. But you know, it was just a unfortunate incident right there on a rainy day.
Just bad luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had a little colloquy with Mr. Myers about whether Jeff's medical long forms were incomplete or inaccurate. Who would you expect to have a conversation with Mr. Evans about the inaccurate long form?
I would have thought it would have been a medical provider, a physician, the licensed physician.
And when you're talking about the licensed physician, are you talking about the certified medical examiner we've been talking about?
That's correct.
Okay. And lastly, you recall we put up Mr. Burke yesterday, the pleasant elderly gentleman who
Yes.
sat up there. You remember him?
Yes.
All right. And I'll summarize his testimony. And you recall that he said that he worked for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
And that he was in charge of enforcing the federal motor carrier regulations upon motor carriers.
That's correct.
Remember that?
Yes, sir.
And do you recall his testimony that he said that the three most important documents to qualify a driver as competent to drive a tractor trailer
Yes, sir.
was a CDL,
That's correct.
an MVR,
That's correct.
and a medical certificate?
That's correct.
Prior to this incident of July 1, 2020, did you have a valid CDL from Mr. Evans?
That's correct.
Prior to this incident of July 1, 2020, did you have a valid MVR,
Yes, sir.
a clean MVR?
That's correct.
And prior to this incident of July 1, 2020, did you have a signed medical certificate from a certified medical examiner indicating to you that Mr. Evans was medically competent to drive a tractor trailer?
That's correct. I have it.
Mr. Ogletree, I think you did great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Ms. Davis? Recross?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
All right, you may return to your seat. All right, members, who's your next witness?
That's it, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Davis, do you intend to present any evidence?
I don't, Your Honor.
All right, so do you all want to rest when they get back, or do you want to do it now?
Your Honor.
Yeah, we're breaking in just a moment. So,
Subject to our evidence putting in, then we'll rest.
okay, and both rests were that, so we're okay there. So, okay, then what I'm going to do, members of the jury, is, remember I told you all there was some housekeeping I was technically supposed to do between the two phases, and we're going to do this now. So I've got a little before 12:22, or I'm sorry, at 12:22. I'm going to have you all come back about 2 o'clock. That's going to give us time to do a little bit more housekeeping, deal with motions, take a quick break themselves. So while you're outside the courtroom, don't do any homework, don't talk about this case, don't let anybody talk about it with you, don't get information from anywhere else. With that said, please put your items in the jury room, and we'll see you all at 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock. Okay. Piper. Help him. For the record, Mr. Bennett is having a medical episode. Let's go. Margaret? Margaret? Yours go out that way? Yours go out?
Yes.
Will you just walk through and make certain Patrick's not conducting any business through there? And then take him out that way.
Need to go to the bathroom? Hold that. Of course, of course.
Yeah, you got it. Oh, hold on, Margaret. I think we can take them this way.